Namaste and good morning, everyone. Let's do some prayers before our class. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhurbhuva Swaha, Tatsavitra Varenayam, Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi, Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat, Asto Ma Sadgamya, तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गम्य मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गम्य ओम सहनावतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ओम शांति शांति शांति. Let's open our books or notebooks for Yog Darshan. We are towards the end of the third chapter. And the title of this chapter is Vibhuti Yoga. See, the title itself tells us what is in there. You remember the first chapter, Samadhi Pad? We talked about samadhis, different kinds of samadhis also. Then in Sadhana Pad, Rishi Patanjali told us what kind of a sadhana we need to do, the practice in order to reach those samadhis. Then in the third chapter, he is telling us, when you do the sadhana, you will attain certain powers. And these could be some of the powers. But then he is warning us that do not do the sadhana for the sake of the powers. They will come, but kind of stay detached from them. Stay detached. And then in the fourth chapter, which we will start today or next week, Kaivalya Path. That is the ultimate goal. Kaivalya. Kaivalya word means only. We are only Atma. Only. Kaivalya. So let's look at what kind of a power a yogi gets in verse number 355. So there are only two verses, and we already started talking about 55, but I want to go a little bit more detail on that. Tarakan sarvavishayan sarvathavishayam akraman cheti vivekajan jnanam. So I was telling you last week the terms tarak, sarvavishya, sarvathavishya, and akraman. These are the technical terms in this verse which we need to understand. And then the last term he says vivekajan jnanam, knowledge born of vivek, the discrimination. So the transcendental knowledge, that is a tarakam, includes the knowledge of all objects, sarvavishayam. All beyond all orders of succession, and is born of vivek. That is all, he says. So this kind of a distinctive knowledge is liberating and has everything as its object and is not the object of anything and is beyond sequence. Because everything else in life happens because of the sequence. We know that ordinary mind does not have the capacity to distinguish one instant from the another, or one cognition associated with an instant from another cognition associated with another instant. That's an ordinary mind. But this transcendental level can teach us beyond that. So let's look at the term. See, tarak we already talked about. That is a transcendental knowledge. Sarvavishya, that means inclusive of all objective experiences. So that means everything known in the past, in the present, and also about future is fully present in this knowledge. That is a taraka. And then sarvathavishayam, the second term, this knowledge is not an object of anything. It cannot be comprehended by perception, inference, or scriptural testimony. So that means mind cannot conceive it. The intellect cannot comprehend it. And even the scriptures cannot articulate it. It is self-revealed and known by its very self. That's why it's called self-born, self-contained, self-sustained effulgence. Sarvathavishayam. This is the one which really illuminates our senses. Senses cannot illuminate it. This is the knowledge which really illuminates our faculties of thought, identification, our discernment. But on the other hand, these faculties cannot grasp it. That's why it's called tarak, transcendental. Because we know the entire objective world is known by it, yet the objective world does not know it. Finally, this distinctive knowledge is akrama. Because we learned the word krama before, it's akrama, beyond a sequence. We are all familiar with our experiences in the phenomenal world. They are dependent on and regulated by the sequence of our ever-flowing units of indivisible instants. Kshan after kshan. That's how we know everything. Because there is an unstoppable flow of these units of time. And through this sequence, we know things. But this knowledge, distinctive knowledge, transcends this linearity of time, yet preserves all cognitions and experiences beginning to the world of linearity. So akrama, or non-linearity, is the defining attribute of distinctive knowledge. So as soon as the cognitions and experiences and the linear instants bearing them enter the non-linear reality, their linearity collapses. So it's just like a right away. So that's why Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says that my devotee will know this everything, can enter into me and can know it all. These are called the lords of the yogis, yogeshwars. So highest caliber siddhs they are called, because they have crossed the realm of time and space. See, we are under the umbrella of time and space, but they have crossed beyond that, and that's what the transcendental means. They are called Kaivalya. That is another technical word. Knowers of time, Kaivalya. They know the past also, the present also, the future also. Kaivalya. These yogis, they are also called Kalbhid, penetrators of time. Kalbhedya, that is another term used in the scriptures, unpenetrated by time. So time cannot penetrate in them. So Kal doesn't have any effect on them. And they are the controller of the time. And due to their immersion in ever-present, beginningless, middleness, and unchanging transcendent time. They themselves are Kal. That's what Lord Krishna told Arjuna. Because when Arjuna said, what am I seeing? I see you everywhere. I don't know what the beginning is, what the end is, which the middle is, everywhere. So Lord Krishna said this, right now I am the Kal. So they themselves are Kal. They are distinguished beings vested with the power to create, power to maintain, destroy, cast the veil of inertia. So that means they have become the controller of this Prakriti. In yoga tradition, these Siddha masters are not Ishwara because they still retain their individuality. But they are like Ishwara because they are not subject to the limitations that accompany individuality. So when they are in the body, that's why we call them avatars. And these divinities, they could be Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Dakshin Murti, Vamadev, Aghor. Lot of yogis. Throughout time, there have been countless yogis of this caliber. They have come. Sometimes more than one at a time too. Whatever the need of the time is. So they are one and many. They are at once fully in the world, guided, governed by linear time and untouched by the world. And they have this akram sankalapa. So that is the term over here, akram, non-linear intention. So this phenomena is also called akram srishti, non-linear creation. So this non-linear intention is the sabhava of these yogis. So that's why sometimes we don't understand what is really happening in their lives. And we just disregard it because we don't understand with our little mind. Yogis with such a non-linear sankalpa are Brahma, the creator of the phenomenal world. Because sometimes we wonder how can just one glance they can create this beautiful universe. Their non-linear intention is imbued with unconditional love and compassion. Because we wonder, why do they come here? Gurus, why do they come in a body? Why do they take birth? Because they have compassion for us, people like us. They want to show us the path. They see that we are afflicting with our sanskars. So they have a lot of compassion for us. Lord Krishna again said to Arjuna many times, you are so dear to me. That's why I'm teaching you this. So the state of consciousness these yogis embody is known as tarak. Another way we understand tarak also, that they liberate us. Tarak, tar karne wala. They can liberate us with their, sometimes with a glance or sometimes with their, they motivate us. They tell us what to do, what not to do, and if we follow it, sure, we become liberated too. So the practice leading to the achievement of this state begins with the meditation actually. Because if we want to reach up to this level, because this is for all of us, starts with meditation. Meditation on what? You remember? In the beginning he said, meditation on Vishok and Jyotishmati. These are the two terms we learned. There's a lot of, so many verses he has spent on describing these kind of meditations for us. So the space that lies between the states of Vishok and Tarak. So Tarak is the final destination of the meditative journey that begins with Vishok. That's another way you can understand it. So is the practice leading to the distinctive knowledge, Tarak, and the power engendered by its essential highest goal of yoga, is it the Nirbij Samadhi? Because that is another term we often hear from these yogis. So in the final sutra, Rishi Patanjali is addressing this question. Is a Tarak same as the Nirbij Samadhi? See, there's a Sabij Samadhi. You remember there are so many layers of Samadhis. Sabij means, Bij is the seed. Sa means with. And what are the seeds? Seeds of our sanskars, our impressions, our karmas. Seeds. So Nirbij means without any seeds. There are no seeds left. We have roasted all of them, burnt all of them. Nirbij Samadhi. Let's look at the last verse of this chapter. Sattvapurushayoh shuddhisamye kaivalyam iti. Sattvapurushayoh, of mind or the chit of the Purusha. Purush means the soul, this Atma. Shuddhi, purification. Samye, on becoming equal. Kaivalyam, isolation. Iti means end. So that means that is the end of this chapter, Iti. Kaivalya is achieved by equalizing and purifying the illumination of Purusha and Cheti. So Purusha is always pure, but we have to bring our mind and the Chit to that level of purity. So when the purity of the mind becomes equal to the purity of the Atma, absoluteness arises, Kaivalyam arises. We all know that mind is the greatest of all mysteries. Last week we talked about the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, the unconscious mind. It has so many layers. Mind is the source of all known and the unknown powers. That's why each of us has a natural urge to discover and reclaim the treasures hidden in our mind and the natural world. Because even when we are dreaming, where the dreams are coming from the mind, then we want to know, what do those dreams mean? We are very curious about it. They are coming from mind. But to know all this requires a sharp, laser-focused mind. And that's why the yoga sadhana is the means of cultivating such a mind. As we commit ourselves to yoga sadhana, we are first confronted with the mind's roaming tendencies. You sit down, make a firm resolution that every day I will meditate, but mind doesn't let you. Sometimes at the bodily level, the knees are hurting, back is too weak to sit up. But even if you can conquer your physical problems, mind itself starts jumping here and there. But with the sustained practice, which is called abhyas, will gradually we attenuate the subtle causes of the mental disturbances. And which are those? roaming tendencies. And even inertia. Some people tell me that they fall asleep. So that's why we got to make sure that we meditate at the time when the stomach is not too full or we are not too tired. Choose the right time. Because we got to protect the mind from going into the tamsikta, inertia. Because they create obstacles in our practice of meditation. So this roaming tendencies and this lethargicness, the laziness. So according to this Rishi Patanjali, the source of these mental disturbances, distractions, are fivefold afflictions. We learned these afflictions. We should never forget what we have learned. Those are 5 afflictions. And in conjunction with the tap, swadhyaya, ishwar pranidhan, the system of meditation described in this 3rd chapter calms the mind. Okay, so 2nd chapter started with that kriya yoga, tap, swadhyaya, ishwar pranidhan. And in the 3rd chapter, continuously he kept telling us, do the meditation. Turn your mind inward, the mind which wants to roam into the outer world, turn it inward. Because it has to get in touch with this hidden potential. Each step of meditation is marked by its own unique intensity of concentration, revelation, and power of discernment. Okay, so there are different stages. In fact, Rishi Patanjali talked about the 7 stages also. He taught us sattvapurushayoh for meditators. Because these varying degrees of intensity empower the mind to shake off its tamsikta and disown its dark, dull, and self-defeating tendencies. So we should be aware of it. What is stopping me from moving forward? What is that enemy in me which is not letting me walk on this path? So this results in the removal of mental impurities. And with its newly found purity, clarity, concentration, and sharpness, the mind is able to identify the extraordinary gifts of nature which are buried inside us. All these are inside us. So this process matures into the development of siddhis, extraordinary yogic powers. And that's what he has been going through in this chapter for us. That more and more you meditate, you will see that these powers are emerging. Although siddhis are not the ultimate goal of yoga sadhana, remember that. I cannot emphasize enough on that, because our ordinary human mind runs after the powers. We get charmed by it. So that's why we got to remember this. The manifestation of siddhis only validates our practice. That's all. In Sutra 37 of this chapter, Patanjali warns us. He says, for one with an outwardly running mind, they are extraordinary accomplishments. But for one aspiring to samadhi, they are obstacles. So the goal of yoga sadhana is to gain such a high degree of mental purity and concentration that the mind is able to know its knowing power. He even talked about that mind is like a gem, like a crystal. And in our Ved mantras, the rishis, they call this mind, when it's clear and pristine and pure, they call it a devta also. Jyotishmati. So we got to remember that. So the degree of mental purity goes hand in hand with the disowning the deep-rooted karmic impressions that gives rise to our mental tendencies. So that means the more we clear our sanskars, more we clear our mental impressions, the clearer our mind will be. Because we often talk about that have a clear mind. See, we know how to clean our car, we know how to clean our body, we know how to clean our house, but how do we clean our mind? See, body, sure, outside of the body, we can clean it with water. But can we clean the mind with water? When we go through the first two stages of Ashtanga Yoga, that's how we clean our mind. Ahimsa, Satya, Ste, Brahmacharya, Vigraha, Shauch, Santosh, Tap, Swadhyay, Ishu, Nidhan. When we fully walk on that path, mind becomes clean. So the goal of yoga sadhana is to gain such a high degree of mental purity and concentration that the mind is able to know its own knowing power. This degree of mental purity goes hand in hand with disowning the deep-rooted karmic impressions. So this results in the experience of cheti samvit. We've been talking about this word also. Cheti samvit, the technical word, that means the mind's knowing power. Cheti samvit. At this stage, the mind is fully illumined by the radiance of Purusa. Purush means the Atma, the pure consciousness. So when the mind is completely clean, there's no obstruction. Otherwise, these sanskars are the one which are impressed on the mind. We cannot know who we are. So that's why it's very important to clean our mind, to know the reality. So this is a highly significant stage in the meditative process. That you are sitting and there's no obstruction created by the mind. Powered by the radiance of pure consciousness, the mind is able to rise above its identification with the body. Because right now, who says I am this body? Whether it's a healthy body or unhealthy body or a beautiful body or old body, who says it? Mind is the one which is identifying with it. And we talked about this also earlier. And as this experience matures, that means as you know that you are not the body, and mind stays pristine, clear, a yogi is able to use the non-imaginary but fully palpable space of consciousness outside his body also. Because this Atma is not only inside, it's everywhere. Because who says that Atma is contained inside or imprisoned inside? It's only the mind says that. When mind has reached that level, of course, there's a clarity. And this requires a highly meditative practice. This practice allows a yogi to further refine his cheti samvit. And this results in the next level of purity. And that's how the mind explores into the subtle dimensions of the primordial Prakriti. And that's what he was talking about, the linearity or the non-linearity. So here in this final sutra, Rishi Patanjali is stating that after having attained the most refined state of chitta samvit, a yogi can, for the sake of his own pleasure, explore these subtle dimensions or ignore them altogether and enter the highest state of samadhi, which is known as nirbija. So the criteria for accessing nirbij samadhi is what? Shuddhisamye. Atma is shuddha. It's pristine, it's clear. We don't need to purify the Atma. We got to purify the mind, which is as pristine, as clear as the Atma. That's why I said Shuddhisamye. This is an exalted state of yoga in which the purity of the mind is identical to the purity of the Atma, the soul, or the Purush. Same thing, different words. So this level of purity dawns when the mind is no longer identifies itself even with its most revealing meditative sanskars. Because sometimes we just get so bogged down with our meditative, during meditation, what we see, and they become a sanskars too. So we got to learn how to detach from that too. So the distinction between this level of experience and the experience of kutastha nityata, we talk about that word also. The beginningless, middleness, unending instant from which the linearity of time issues and into which it dissolves also. It's detectable by the yogis. So to summarize this entire chapter, because we are towards the end of this chapter, Rishi Patanjali states definitely that nirbij samadhi is the final goal of yoga. Okay, that's one thing we should remember. Nirbij samadhi. Why? Because it is the state of kaivalya, absoluteness. And it is experienced. It's not something which you only talk about. This needs to be experienced as a sadhaka while we reside in this body. In this state of kaivalya, a yogi is swarup matra jyoti, the sheer light of his her own essence. Swarup matra jyoti. That means that essence is not contaminated by even the most subtle attributes of nature, let alone the stains of the sanskars. So that's why it's called amal. Amal means that some kind of a dirt, some kind of a sanskar. Amal means stainless. It's also called Kaivalya, absolutely free. Keval means only. For such a yogi, there's nothing undone and nothing to be achieved. This yogi is perfect in every respect. So in this verse, Sattvapurushayoh, shuddhisamye. These are the key terms we learned. So whatever we have learned in these three first chapters, we got to just practice them now. Reflect upon our own mind instead of thinking about somebody else's mind. As human beings, we waste so much time thinking about what others are thinking. Turn your attention inward. What is there in your mind? How can you clean it? How can you make it as pristine, as clear, as pure as the Atma? It can be done many different ways. But to me, I think if we do apply all the ways, all the known ways, like a seva also, swadhyaya also, sadhana also, if you apply all of them, and the bhakti also, the prayers, live a life which we call, or my Guruji used to call, yoga nukul. The entire life should be like that. Not just only when we are on our yoga mat or when we are in our prayer rooms, but outside also. Are we living a life like a yogi or not? Because we have to do that in order to reach here. You remember in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna, what did he say? A yogi is awake when everybody else is asleep. And yogi is asleep when everybody else is awake. And I always say that that is one of the verses. There's a deep message, but misunderstood also. Yogi is awake towards which everybody else is asleep. Awake. He is awakened that, hey, this is my goal. I need to clean myself. My goal is to become one with God. I got to live a life like a yogi. That is what he's awake to. And he is asleep to what? Where everybody else is awake. Living like a bhogi. He is asleep to that. He has turned the senses inward. Eyes don't want to see all these scenes outside. Because yogi knows no matter where I go, it's all made up of those 5 elements. Everything else is changeable. Yogi is asleep to this changing world. So where everybody else is awake, running towards the bhog padarth, yogi is asleep. And wherever everybody else is asleep to, moving towards this ultimate goal, he is fully awakened. So choice is ours. Do we want to live like a yogi or a bhogi? So this is what this great scripture, even though very small scripture, I always tell you 196 lines only. But the wisdom, in each sutra, we can write a thesis on it. So we got to see how much we practice out of it. So next week, we'll start with the 4th chapter, which is called Kaivalya. And again, that is not a very long chapter, and we'll go through it to the best of our knowledge. Thank you very much. Let me do the Shanti Path also before I take up the questions. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaye Purnam Eva Vishishyate. Om Shanti 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 Om. Thank you very much again.